Hey everyone, it's Dale Walker here and creator of FixYouOnline.com and the Correcticise program. And I create do-it-yourself online programs that empower you to take healing back into your own hands. So today I'm going to be talking about resilience and welcome everyone. So today's topic is resilience, and we're all the way up to lesson 9 in our 14-day daily mini trainings on, correcticizing your life. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started on resilience. So here we are, and this is probably going to be kind of fast, although it's a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, and I love the word resilience because I think that being or achieving health is not that you don't ever get sick or hurt. It means that you are able to bounce back with greater resilience or more quickly. So you're more resilient to the disease or trauma. So if you and another person went through the same exact trauma or were exposed to the same exact toxins or disease, the person who has better fitness is going to be the one who will not sustain such a great injury and will recover more quickly. So that's my definition. Here's the logistics on how to reach out or learn more. You can reach out to FixYouOnline.com, FixYouOnline TV, or the Facebook group Fix You Online. So moving forward, what is health resilience? So I thought it was kind of interesting to put the information box below. So when I looked up definition of resilience, look at this. There's resilience in nursing, in business, in mental health, in healthcare, and psychology, social work, biology, child development, engineering. Everybody needs to have resilience, it looks like. But psychologists define resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stressors. So I think that resilience is a great quality to have in our lives, and it's one of the goals of the Correcticise for Life program, to gain resilience from future injury and disease. So the key word in the definition that I found interesting, and we need to be adaptable in order to be resilient. And the way to do so, with regard to the definition, again, I took the things that seemed relevant to fitness and health. So one was trauma, the second is stress, and the third is health problems. So again, here's the boat in the storm here, adapting to the inclement weather, the environmental conditions, and the better the boat is built, the better the boat is maintained, and the more competent the crew, the more resilient this boat will be to this serious storm. It's just like that as a human. So here's trauma, and what are the things that will help diminish the likelihood of trauma? We're talking about physical trauma here. So one is flexibility in the joints. So I'll give you an example. When my daughter was about 3 years old, she fell down a flight of about 23 stairs at my mother's house. Thankfully, they were carpeted backwards. And so I witnessed this. She actually tumbled over, and, obviously she was stunned and upset, but taking her to the emergency room, they did not even wind up doing a MRI or X-ray because they cleared her and they felt that she was just fine from this particular trauma. Now, if my grandmother at the time, who was in her 80s, sustained the same forces down the same flight of stairs, her result would probably be very different because they are different bodies. So even if the force is the same, the flexibility of the body, the ability to adapt body is going to be very different. And this is significant because when we think of flexibility, I prefer to use the word mobility, because when we think of flexibility, we think muscles. But when you are dealing with a joint or a particular body part, it is important to have mobility through that entire part. So I'm going to give you an example of my ankle, right? The ankle. So the ankle sprainers of the world, this is the ligament that gets sprained. It's right here, okay? Now that's where the injury is sustained. And the mechanism typically is something called supination, which is when the ankle rolls inward or the foot rolls inward and the stress goes here. Now, what I've found is that when I'm working with chronic ankle sprainers or somebody who has sustained an ankle sprain, the best way to treat them is to not address this problem, okay, but to address all of these other joints in front of it. And there's like 40 of them that need to move into this position of supination. Because if these joints were all moving into supination, then there would be less stress at this particular ligament that winds up sustaining the brunt of the trauma. So while the injury is here, the reason for the injury is in the foot and the forefoot and the midfoot. And so because I've done a lot of work on my feet, if I was walking and rolled my ankle over a rock, and I would probably not sustain an injury because I have good mobility in all of these joints. However, somebody who has never done work on their foot and ankle, which is the majority of people in the Western world, particularly at that micro level, okay, at the specific joint level, like I do, then they are likely to sustain a trauma, even though the forces were exactly the same. It's because our bodies and our mobility are different. And that is why I cannot emphasize enough the release work that I've been talking about. The second is strength. And so when somebody, for example, like a collision sport in football, yesterday I spoke about Joe Montana. I could speak about another example of when strength was going to be important with regard to being able to sustain traumas, right? Physical traumas, and not become injured. And in particular, the core muscle strength. So as I mentioned that, you know, in the story with Joe Montana, and I'll tell a different story today, was in my own life. I was walking down, I was in Manhattan, I think it was 33rd Street, and coming to Park Avenue, and somebody was walking along Park Avenue at the corner of 33rd, and we literally did not see each other and collided. And I happened to be holding my rollerblades in one hand, my coffee in another hand, and this individual was younger, at least by 10 years than me, and he literally ricocheted off of my body. And he came to me and he said, "Why did you push me?" And I said, "I didn't." First of all, I had no hands to push because I was holding my rollerblades and holding my coffee. But I said, I didn't push you. I tried to explain to him that my alignment, right, in my body was so good that my core muscles kicked in right away when I felt a perturbation, right? Because your body does anything not to fall. So your core muscles will kick in, but you need to have the core muscle, not only strength, but again, going back to alignment where the muscles will contract with greatest vigor or strength when they're at a particular length, and that includes our core muscles. So the core muscles needed to contract, and they will do so right away because they are our postural muscles. Those are our stabilization muscles. So when you have a trauma or if you knock into somebody, that is going to be very, very important. Same thing if somebody comes behind you and they try to block out your knees, right? And you catch yourself. That's kind of a core muscle strength reaction because you're not expecting it. And then, of course, fall prevention. So again, there are 44% of all falls are due to environmental hazards, but the remaining, 66% is internal. So again, it's important to prevent hazards, but we can't live our lives, avoiding situations that may be hazardous, because we don't know when they're not in our house what we're going to come across. So again, protecting ourselves by 66% by doing the internal work that I talked about in the balance mini training. Then we need to have the knowledge. So again, when we talk about the core muscle strength and even the flexibility, that is knowledge of alignment. So, and that's the second one, right? We need to know how to align. And then we need to physically be able to align. And how do we do that is through release of connective tissue, so that then we can easily, segmentally, without compensation, put the body into alignment, and then our core muscle strength will work better, our regular strength will work better, and our flexibility will even work better. And then the last one is time. Okay, so investing time to address all of these issues with regard to trauma, and then also the time that it takes to resolve the trauma or recover from the trauma. And that is going to be a factor that when you're more resilient, it will take less time, when you're better able to heal, when you're able to put yourself in a position to go ahead and create an environment for healing. And that can include psychological visualization techniques. So there is a research study that found that just thinking about making a muscle stronger will make it stronger. True story. So there are many factors that aren't being addressed with regard to our health and well-being that are out there and are valid. So there's a lot of information or a lot of tactics, right, that I'm giving you to become more resilient. The second is stress. That is me with technology. When it comes to health, that is not me. I am calm, cool, collected, and confident because that is my bread and butter. But I can completely relate to this picture because I was dealing with technological stresses today. And those can be, stress can be physical, like we just talked about, the traumas, right? Or the micro traumas even, which I didn't even get into. Because again, when you're sitting poorly, when you're lifting poorly, when you're walking on a car, a body that figuratively speaking has a flat tire or low air, you are causing physical stress and trauma, micro traumas that over time are going to lead to injury. It's inevitable. I can look at a person and tell you where they have problems because of their posture. And if they don't have them yet, they will. The second is emotional. So again, when we are more fit and more resilient, these stressors, I had a stressor. I went into a story about, a lot of different stupid stuff. But I was able to recognize that this is my story, that this is not the reality, and get out of it fairly quickly without really having it ruin my day. But also, when we are in the right posture, life is easier, right? So we don't have to experience at least the emotion of chronic pain, which is something that can make people highly emotional. So when individuals, when I see individuals who've been in pain for a long period of time, I delicately say to them that there is an emotional component to it. There has to be, because I have been in chronic pain due to an infection that was undiagnosed for a month. And it becomes emotional. It just does. So that is an important component, as well as when we're talking about pain, is that when you are in pain for a period of time, you become more sensitive to pain. You don't become less sensitive to pain like you would if you were a drinker, right? So if you drank alcohol and you kept drinking alcohol, you develop a tolerance. You don't develop a pain tolerance with more pain. In fact, it's just the opposite. And then we talked about the environmental stresses, which could be your shoes, your chair, your car, your workstation, your phone. All of these stresses are environmental and will contribute to microtraumas that over time will wind up causing you a problem. Sleeping positions, many, many different environmental factors that are often overlooked, because it's different that, than going out and playing baseball and blowing out your ACL than waking up in the morning and, doing something habitually. It happens slowly over time. So sometimes you can't even pinpoint, well, what is the environmental stress? And I can give you some techniques that I use when I'm talking to people in clinic to narrow it down. Health problems. So we have things on what we can do to become more resilient to health problems. One is prevention. The second is finding the right person. So it's not how, but who. Because health problems are pretty, unless you have good background knowledge, can be pretty daunting and overwhelming and can cause a lot of research. And that doesn't mean that you don't do your own research, but I find it really helpful to talk to people who know what they're talking about. And then the last question is, does it work? And so I'm going to go into those a little bit more deeply. So with regard to prevention, nutrition, obviously the research is showing this over and over again, and I would even say supplementation. And that is not my expertise, but I do kind of have a tenet that I try to live by, is that if it does not come from nature, don't eat it. And also try to know where your food is coming from. Try to know the source. So that's about the only advice I will give on nutrition, because it is not my expertise. Appropriate exercise, however, is my expertise. And so I hope through these mini trainings, you've understood that specificity of training, when you want to get better at something, you need to do that particular activity or break down the components of that activity into small mini activities that you can improve and then put it all together over time. So understanding, if you want to get better at balance, understanding the components that are involved with balance and target those particular areas, right? So my doing this with my hands is not going to help my balance, right? But if I'm working on my foot and ankle with regard to mobility and flexibility, then I'm improving the mobility of my base of support. And again, balance is the control of the center of gravity around the base of support. So anything that involves doing that is going to improve your balance, as well as incorporating proprioception, right? Sensory fitness, which we talked about. And then having knowledge of the body and your body, right? Because what's good for some people is not always good for another person. And so that's why it's really important to find what works for you. And I try not to ever put my bias or my feelings onto another person, because again, it may not be appropriate for their particular circumstances for whatever reason. And I certainly don't ever take that personally. But knowledge of your body, so tuning in and figuring out what works. And then obviously maintenance, right? This is something that is so overlooked, because if I give you the car, any car that you want, you pick it, you pick the car, but the caveat is that is the only car that you are ever going to drive. It's the only one you're ever going to have. You can't sell it. You can't get rid of it. You can't use another car. It's that car or no car, right? Would you not maintain it, right? But we don't maintain our bodies. And then we balk a lot of times at the cost of maintaining our bodies. First of all, there isn't a lot of knowledge on how to maintain the body, who to go to maintain your body, or how to do it. And again, that is just the mechanism of our healthcare. It tends to be reactive rather than proactive. And what I encourage everyone to do is be proactive, especially in your health. You might say, oh, it costs a lot of money, but you know what? It costs thousands for a family to put somebody in a nursing home for an extended period of time. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands over time. It costs this country hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. And it's no fun for anyone. So what I found, and I'm hoping, because I haven't spoken to them in a while, but there are two people that I worked with who, even after our physical therapy was over, they continued to pay me to do maintenance on them. And the last that I checked is that they were both in their 90s. They were both still living at home. And they did, don't get me wrong, they were not 100% independent, but it was for minor stuff. It was not for major stuff. It wasn't for toileting and showering and the things that are humiliating. Quite honestly, I think as we get older, or when we get to that point in our life and in our health, and the best way to not get there is to do the things that I'm telling you to do right now. So hopefully I will get an interview with one of them before we're finished with the mini trainings. So I say who, not how. Okay, when you're looking for somebody to help you, these are some of the things that you need to look for. Okay, so this is a guy, he looks like a con artist to me. He's bright and he's sunny and he's cool and he's suave and he's looking good and he's confident, and that's all great. I don't trust him, right? Well, who do you trust? Okay, the thing, again, there's a joke that says, what do you call the person who graduated last in medical school? You call him doctor, okay? I'm not saying that the person who didn't get great grades in medical school, because I was an average student, I was a B+ student, but there are other things that can make somebody better. Michael Jordan was not the best, most talented raw talent of basketball. Neither was, gosh, his name's escaping me right now, the quarterback for the New England Patriots. I cannot think of his name. It's going to bother me. Tom Brady, right? These guys worked hard. They had some talents, and you have to have some talent to get into medical school or to train in whatever modality that you're gonna go into. However, it's what you do with that information really makes somebody an expert. The next is experience. So even the smartest person right out of medical school, and I'm using medicine as an example, and when I say that, I mean all disciplines. Even the wisest person coming out of a particular program, you gain knowledge and wisdom with experience. So having a lot of experience can speak volumes to certain situations, especially when it comes to your health. Then the emotion. How much do they care, right? Is this just their job, or do they actually care? And I was thinking about this today, in business, right? Because I'm looking for some people to help me with marketing. And I think a question that I'm going to ask the person that I'm interviewing is, how much do you care about my success? On a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is you care a whole lot. 1 is you don't really care. What is that number? Give me a number about how much you care about your clients, because it's going to vary from person to person. And I think that you do want somebody who is proud of their work, who gives 100% and cares about your outcome. And again, I think that that's a no-brainer because of my own emotions around my work. But, unfortunately, that is not true for everyone. And then I put intention, what's their agenda? Okay, so nowadays, and I'm speaking about my experience in the United States. So again, if this is reaching people in other countries, I can't speak to this. And I am just sharing my experience. This is not my opinion per se, but I have found that individuals, they have less of an agenda or are less concerned about making money when the kids' college is paid for, their mortgage is paid for, and their student loans are paid for. Because you have to, some people have to earn money. And that might just, it's a bias. I'm sorry. It's just, it has to be a bias. And this is one of the reasons why I chose never to open an office, because I did not want to have the financial pressure on me to not do the right thing by my patient and keep them longer than they needed to do. I don't think anybody's going to, purposely harm their patient to keep them going, except maybe I won't say it. I'm not going to say it. I think that there are, unfortunately, some, I'll get into this tomorrow, but I think there are some organizations that prefer for the general population to be unhealthy because that's how they make their money. And that is a sad realization that I think I've come across and again, in personal experience. But what is their agenda? So I'll give you another story. A family member of mine has an issue with their heart, and they were referred to a cardiologist, again, within a system, a healthcare system. So again, when you're working in a big business, which healthcare is a business and it's a big group, right? Big organization, kind of a monopoly where there's a bunch of doctors, they will oftentimes only refer in their office. In fact, I will give you a different story. A friend of mine is a physical therapist in New York, and she treats patients in their homes. And a nurse practitioner who is a referring nurse practitioner for her clients will not give her clients a referral for physical therapy because she is not part of the system. Again, this is happening. It's happening in the United States. It might not be happening in your town yet or whatever, but understand that when you are part of a system, you will not always get referred to the best person for you, but you'll get referred to somebody in the system. And this, again, happened with my family member who has a heart problem, who got a referral from his doctor, wanted to go see this person, and this person actually wouldn't go see him because he was already referred to another doctor within the system. Okay? I don't like that model. I don't like that model at all. So again, understand the agenda, the situation, and all of these other factors which are really important on who to choose. The next question is, does it work? So how do you know whether something's going to work for you? I think that trusting your guts is a really good thing. If somebody resonates with you, if you are talking with somebody, a lot of times you could be like, you know what, that person knows what they're talking about. They know what they're talking about. So, and you feel comfortable, in trusting them with, because again, I can't think of a more personal thing to entrust somebody with than your body. So that is important. Then obviously their reputation. Okay. So you can look up, malpractice suits against them, or, talk to other people, look at their scorecard. Although, on Google, the people that you recommend, I don't know, Google something, more times than not, people will write a bad review rather than a good review. So you kind of want to keep that in mind. Word of mouth is really important. And then, obviously, what are their results? Ask them, hey, listen, can I talk to somebody who has something similar going on? And ask them how, can you put me in touch with them to give me, some feedback on you and your work, and how I can, expect for you to help me. Super important things. And so the other thing that I recommend is, asking your doctor, hey, listen, if you had this problem, who would you go to and why? If this was going on in your body, who would you go to and why? And the other two professions that I think are really good to ask are nurses, and this will be three: nurses, physical therapists, and malpractice attorneys. Physical therapists and nurses work with the patients, so they know who's good. They know who's good. And then obviously, malpractice attorneys will also know who's the expert, who's really good, and who's not so great. So those are the two people that I recommend to ask. And then lastly, a little bit of inspiration on a Friday from Franklin D. Roosevelt. So it is common sense to take a method and try it. If it fails, admit it and try another, but above all, try something. So if you are not functioning the way that you want to, if you are, you have anything in your life that's not working up to snuff, then try it. But don't wind up spending a lot of time on something that does not work. So when I work with clients, I used to say 4 visits. I don't even say that anymore. If I'm not able to get somebody better in 1 visit and see results at that point in time, and God forbid they're worse, I go back, I think about it, and if there was something I missed, I'll ask to see them again. But if not, I will refer them on. And that is what a reputable healthcare person with the right intention will do. So with that, I hope you guys got some good information from this, and I will certainly take any questions on this topic. It's obviously really important because it might just save your life at some point in time. All right, so any questions on this? I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wish you all a happy Friday. Tomorrow, okay, we might be going on a rant tomorrow, but tomorrow I am going to kind of talk more about medicine and medical errors and experiences that I've had with, in healthcare for the last 20 some odd years. And again, it's part of resilience, it's part of decision making, and it should be very much in your consciousness because a lot of people aren't aware of it. And, I wasn't aware of it either. It's not something we really like to talk about. So with that, I will go ahead and wish you all a great Friday, and I will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ciao.